Welcome again, everyone. It is uh, the close of this year, and starting 2 nights from now, we're going to be celebrating Rosh HaShanah. So the subject of our discussion is Rosh HaShanah and the Shofar. So we're going to do a little bit of reading and discussing about Rosh HaShanah, but I have a feeling most of it's going to be old hat to many of you, maybe not all of you. But there is a nice Wikipedia article on the shofar, so I thought that would be interesting to spend even a little more time on. So rather than read the article, I think we'll just have a discussion of some of the terms, and you can look and see what it says literally, and I'm going to kind of add my commentary. There was a course at Hebrew Union College, the first year in Jerusalem. There was a course that was called the Terms Course. And it was kind of like this. There would be a lot of terms, but I mean hundreds. And we would get assigned, a lot of them each week. And it was surprising. I thought I was pretty well educated by the time I entered rabbinical school, but there were a bunch of them that I had never heard of. So this is the terms associated with Rosh Hashanah. And maybe I'll jump. I have the same kind of article on the terms associated with Yom Kippur. So the first one, and they're in alphabetical order, so they're not in order of importance for the services and so on, but they're in alphabetical order in English, I should add, and not in Hebrew. So the first one is Akedah, and Akedah means binding. And it's actually an interesting name given to the story, which actually in the Reform tradition, we read, as it says here, traditionally it's read on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and in the Reform tradition, we read it on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, because we don't typically have services on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And I think you probably all know the story. It's the near sacrifice of Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac. And the interesting thing is, instead of being called the sacrifice, it's called the binding, because the text says that Abraham ties Isaac up to lay him on the altar. And I remember a discussion of, why does Isaac need to be tied up? And the answer is to hold him still while Abraham slits his throat. And the reason you want him tied up is, if he just wounds him, let's say Isaac flinches and he cuts his cheek, that would render him, if he was a bull, ineligible for a sacrifice. So there's some interesting midrash about Isaac telling his father, "Please tie me up tight so that I won't flinch and move." But certainly is a very troubling story. By the way, the traditional reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah is the story about the birth of Isaac, and how Sarah convinces Abraham to send Ishmael, Abraham's first son, and Hagar into the desert, presumably to die. So, I mean, if you want to be just troubled by readings in the Torah, the two Rosh Hashanah readings are about how Abraham is going to kill both of his sons. And, there's endless discussion on that. In fact, if Henry, if I'm invited back for a third year, that ought to be a really good discussion, just the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. Okay, so the next one is Chag Sameach, literally happy holiday. And as I always like to point out, the word Chag is, in its original meaning, related to a pilgrimage holiday. There are 3 holidays in Judaism, Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot, when all the males of adult age are commanded to come to Jerusalem. So they are pilgrimage holidays, and they're called chags. And the word chag is related to the Arabic word for hajj, with which you may be familiar. A hajj is a commandment for all Muslims who can afford it to make at least one pilgrimage to Mecca. But we use the term Chag Sameach broadly as happy holiday. We had an entire study session devoted to Elul, the final month of the Jewish calendar, preceding Rosh HaShanah. And
you did something here where I can't get sound.
Jay, I'm going to mute you because we can hear you. I'm not sure why you can't hear us.
Is it?
Michael, did they have Shana Tova in there too?
Yes, we're going to get there.
I
Yes,
didn't do
yes,
anything.
Okay.
okay. So, chet is a word for sin, and there are lots of words for sin in Judaism. I always sort of think of how apparently in native, indigenous peoples, what we used to call Eskimos, have lots of different words for snow and the different kinds of snow and textures of snow. So that may tell you something about the Jewish mindset that we have many, many words for sin. The word chet comes from archery. Yeah, they don't even talk about this. It literally means to miss the mark. So I kind of like this in that we're sort of given the benefit of the doubt. I always say we were aiming at the turkey sandwich and we missed, we got the ham sandwich. Could happen to anybody.
Audio. My speaker is not working.
Well, I'm going to mute Jay until they figures out what's going on. Yeah, and then sometimes I'll say, you were aiming at your wife and you missed, you got your neighbor's wife. I mean, it's you missed. So it is actually a term from archery. And I found out later as I looked hard at the word Torah actually comes from the root for Torah actually comes from the same root as aiming for something. So we have a prayer called Ashamnu. That's one where we beat our chest, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, and all of the phrases are consecutive alphabetic words for sin. So Ashamnu begins with an aleph, Bagadnu begins with a bet, and so on. So another very common word for sin is Aveira, which means to cross over. You're on the right path, but you crossed over into away from the correct path. So there's a bunch. We're going to see L'Shana Tova Tikatevu, I think. But anyway, a very common phrase now is L'Shana Tova U Metuka. So Shana is year, Tova is good, and Matok is sweet. So if you want to wish someone in Hebrew a good and sweet year, L'Shana Tova U Metuka. A very common endearing word that, a boyfriend and a girlfriend will call each other's motek, which means my sweet one, or sweetie. Machzor, which again is related to the root for cycle. Let's see, Jay is joining us again. See if he can hear us. Is typically a prayer book for holidays. And let's see, Jay, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Jay? No?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. So Machzor is a holiday prayer book. Technically, any holiday can have its own small little prayer book. I have a collection, quite old one, more than well over 100 years old. Holidays for Sukkot, prayers for different holidays. But broadly speaking, if someone says Machzor, they're talking about a prayer book for Rosh HaShanah and or Yom Kippur. We spent some time talking about Slichot, literally meaning forgiveness, and it's either a group of prayers. It's also, as we discussed, the name of a service that takes place on Saturday preceding Rosh HaShanah, and some of you may have been at Slichot services at Adat Elohim and elsewhere. We are going to talk about the shofar, so I'm not going to spend time on it. And tashlich means literally to cast away. It's a ceremony observed on the afternoon of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, in which you cast your sins away into a natural body of water. And just in case you're curious where it comes from, I presume you can see now Safari of the book of Micah, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Micah, and it said, God will take us back in love, quashing our iniquities. Let's see what, avonatenu, so that's the word avon. and you will hurl all our sins into the depths of the sea. Wonder what that little thing is. Yeah, or their sins. Oh, that's interesting. Quashing, or perhaps forgiving. Okay. So anyway, so that's the origin of where tashlich comes from. And of course, there are sort of two main customs for tashlich. One is that you empty your pockets of crumbs and things, and then the second is casting bread into the water to the delight of ducks and fish, and I guess to the concern of folks that probably know that Wonder Bread is probably not the ideal food for ducks or fish. And Tishrei is the year that begins Wednesday night with three major holidays: Rosh HaShanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And you know, it always reminds me every now and again, people will ask me, when is Rosh Hashanah this year? And my slightly snide Hebrew remark is, same as always, 1st of Tishrei. A very unhelpful remark.
Yes.
Unatana Tokef, literally we shall ascribe, is a, I guess it's really not a prayer. That's a question whether it's prayer or a poem. I like that they called it a poem here, which in traditional liturgy is recited during Musaf. So I should explain a little bit about Musaf. On Shabbat and holidays, traditional Jews have an extra service. The Musaf means additional. Have an additional service. So you have, I mean, traditionally Jews have 3 services a day: morning, afternoon, and evening. And then on Shabbat and holidays, there is an additional service called Musaf, and this prayer is traditionally said at Musaf, but the Reform movement does not include Musaf, so it will be, I'm pretty sure it's in the morning. Yeah, I'm sure it's in the morning service. I think on both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then the Yamim Noraim, literally the days of awe, referring to the high holiday season. But I would say more specifically the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur. And it's not a phrase I hear a lot, Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, or the 10 days of repentance. And then Yom Tov, literally Yom is day, Tov is good. So it's a Yom Tov, or in Yiddish, Yantif, means a holy day or a good day. And I always find it kind of interesting that, you know, when we say good Yantif, it's actually redundant because the good is already in the word Tov. Actually, while we're looking at this, I wonder if that's this. Yeah, let's take a look at Yom Kippur. These are kind of short articles. So, yeah, so let's go through Yom Kippur, and then there's any discussion we can have it, and then we'll look at the article on the shofar, So Al Chet is the name of a prayer, which means for the sin. So, and we say throughout this prayer, and there's there is a liturgy of sin that all, and the first phrase of that prayer is always a confession, is Al Chet Shechatanu Lefanecha, for the sin we have sinned before you. And one of the things I really like about I'm sure it's in the Yom Kippur, in our new Yom Kippur prayer book. At the end of Yom Kippur, they've added one which I'm pretty sure is not traditional, where they're saying Al Tikun Takenu Lefanecha, for the repair, the healing that we have healed before you, which is sort of the frame of mind as we're getting to the close of Yom Kippur. So I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Avinu Malkeinu, literally our Father, our King, is a a very traditional prayer. It's recited throughout the 10 days of repentance from Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and of course there are some beautiful melodies, including what I always think of as Barbra Streisand's version of it, and then there's kind of a folk melody that even I can sing, and the congregation sings. The one goes, Avinu Malkeinu, Onenu V'Yaneinu. So that one's pretty easy, and even I can sing it. literally means our Father, our King. And so, as you can imagine, there is struggle to make it gender sensitive because there is nothing gender sensitive about our Father, and there's nothing gender sensitive about our King. You can translate it as our parent, our sovereign. And I like our new prayer book's approach as it doesn't translate it at all. In the English, it just says Avinu Malkeinu. It's sort of an interesting thought relating to liturgy generally. Sometimes words like Avinu Malkeinu, certainly in the Hebrew, we just can't change. I mean, Judaism does change Hebrew, Reform Judaism and conservative and Orthodoxy do change the Hebrew of prayers from time to time to conform to theology, but it's hard to get rid of Avinu Malkeinu.
Yeah, who would want to?
Sorry?
Who would want to? It's so beautiful.
Oh, well, I imagine some people might want to. Anyway, Gamar Chatima Tova literally means Gamar, in the end, a good sealing. Gamar is kind of the completion, and the completion in the end, a good sealing. So traditionally, what you say is, and it wasn't in the other list, you say Lishana Tova Tikatevu. So Lishana, to a year, Tova, a good year, Tikatevu. The word katav is in Tikatevu. You may know it from the word ketubah, something that is written. So the idea is, may you be written for a good year, of course, in the book of life. That's what you say before Rosh HaShanah, and you can say it after Rosh HaShanah too. But if you want to be a little more accurate and more traditional, this thing you say between Rosh HaShanah and Yom Kippur is Gamar Chatima Tova. May you be well sealed in the book of life. This is something I don't think I've ever seen anybody wear in the Reform context. A kittel is a particular kind of robe, a white robe, and it's actually supposed to represent a burial shroud. And one of the themes of Yom Kippur is we are embracing our mortality. And if in not so subtle ways, we don't eat, we don't drink, we don't bathe, anoint ourselves traditionally. And if that's all too subtle, the tradition is to wear something resembling a burial shroud to services on Yom Kippur. Jerry.
Yeah, a kittel is also worn in the Orthodox at a wedding under the hook.
I think you're right. I've never seen that either.
I have seen it, yes. And
a wedding actually has a slight flavor of Yom Kippur. Traditionally.
Yeah. And I have seen them wear it on
traditionally
Shabbat.
The bride and groom both fast on the
Yes.
day of their wedding and break the fast only right after the service. And I do think you're right. I mean, there is a tradition of wearing a kittel.
Yeah, I've seen
sort of
it.
humbling.
Yeah. I guess it's, they make this purchase before they get married, and when they die, it's worn for burial as well.
I actually am not sure that you're actually buried in the shroud you would wear for high holidays. I really have no idea.
Well, it's the same one that is used for the wedding.
I don't know what people do. I know, my brother-in-law is a conservative cantor, and I once went with him when he went to buy a new kittel for services, and they get dirty. So, but I don't know much about it. I don't know much about that tradition and the details of that tradition.
Rabbi, I find this interesting because I'm wondering, it's reminding me of Selichot, when you change the Torah covers to white.
Yeah, that happened the other night.
I wonder sometimes if, when that's happening, if the rabbis are wearing white to represent the purity.
They are.
Yeah, so it is traditional on Yom Kippur to wear white and not to wear leather because leather was a sign of wealth, and you're supposed to be kind of humbling yourself. So it is traditional to wear white, both men and women. And as I said, a kittel, a burial shroud for men. I don't know if women had the tradition of doing that. Of course, in the Reform movement, they developed the tradition of wearing robes, which is really copying Protestant practice. I mean, there's nothing in Jewish tradition about wearing robes. I have never worn robes. I know lots of Reformed clergy that like the idea of robes because that means you don't have to worry about what to wear for services. You know, and that's, you know, that can be, it's a particular sore point for women clergy because they feel like they can't wear the same thing again and again and again. That thought has never bothered me or even occurred to me that it would be a problem. I wear a
When I was in Chabad, Rabbi, I used to wear a kittel on Yom Kippur Eve, the night of Yom Kippur. And both rabbis, I noticed wear kittels also.
Both rabbis what?
Both rabbis also wear kittels at night,
yes.
For Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Okay, Kol Nidre. Kol
Can I
Nidre
ask a
actually
question?
is-
Would it be out of place for me to wear a kittel that night on Yom Kippur evening?
to wear a kittel at
Yom
Adar
Kippur
Elohim?
evening, yeah. The night of Yom Kippur.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the tradition is only for the night. I don't think you'd be out of place at all. I think a lot of people would ask you about it.
Okay, great.
So if you like talking about it and explaining it, that's a good thing to do.
Okay,
But I don't think it's out of place at all.
okay.
Kol Nidre, I'm sure you've all heard of that, name of that prayer. It's the first words of a prayer called All Vows. And it is Aramaic because in Hebrew it would be called Nedarim. And it's a prayer recited at the outset of Yom Kippur. This one is worthy of an entire class or several classes because it's of its content. And I won't dwell on it here, but I'll put it this way. This is one of the things that the rabbis have been disturbed about for hundreds of years, but they can't quite get rid of it.
Again, why would they want to?
I'm sorry?
Why would they want to?
Oh, because of the content. Kol Nidre says basically all vows that I am going to make between this year and next year, I hereby absolve myself of them. Namely, any vow or guarantee I'm going to make from this Yom Kippur until next Yom Kippur, I'm letting everybody know that they don't count. And you should
Okay.
hold it on me. And that's caused problems for centuries. And in actually medieval Europe, Jews that were called to testify in trials were asked to hold a Torah scroll when they were sworn in at a trial and swear that the statement on Kol Nidre, that they were nevertheless going to tell the truth, swearing on the Torah scroll, and they weren't relying on Kol Nidre not to tell the truth. But anyway, Kol Nidre is a hugely problematic and fascinating and interesting discussion. Sometimes I feel guilty even discussing it and bringing it up because people love Kol Nidre.
Yeah.
But you know, in the Reform prayer books, if you go back less than 100 years, it's just not there. So in the early Reform prayer books, it goes from, you know, the prayer that's usually said right before Kol Nidre to the prayer that's said after Kol Nidre, and you would not know that Kol Nidre was ever a part of it because people loved Kol Nidre. In the next generation of those high holiday prayer books, there was one phrase, cantor chants Kol Nidre, but the Aramaic is not there and the English translation is not there. In the next edition of the Reform High Holiday Prayer Book, the Aramaic is there, a translation is there, but the translation doesn't reflect any of the problems of Kol Nidre. And now they finally caught up and are being a little more honest about it. So it's an absolutely fascinating subject. We talked about the machzor. Nila means locking. And it's the final service on Yom Kippur, where we have all the final pleas to God to accept our prayers and seal us in the book of life. And it's also a time when many people are not attending because they're home getting ready to break the fast. Teshuvah means literally return, and it means return to the right path. Remember, Aveirah, one of the words for sin, means you've crossed over the path. So Teshuvah means you're returning to the path. Tzom Kal, Tzom means fast, Kal means easy. Basically, what you're doing is wishing someone an easy fast. Jerry.
Yeah, another thing about when we have Nila is we have Kaddish as usually a part of that. And a lot of people, I think, don't.
Well, I think you might be thinking of Yizkor.
Well, Yizkor is what we say, yes.
Yeah, no, hold on.
I'm sorry, the Yizkor service.
Right. That's different than the
And
Nila service.
Right. But it's kind of sandwiched with it.
The Yizkor service precedes the Nila service. So
Yes.
lots of people who don't come anytime during the day will come for Yizkor,
right,
because it's a service of remembrance. There's actually Yizkor traditionally occurs 4 times during the year, once on Yom Kippur and once on each of the 3 major holidays, Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot. But you're right, a lot of people come for Yizkor. I mean, the Mornis Kaddish is said in every service, not just Yizkor, but Yizkor is specifically devoted to remembering loved ones who have passed away. And Vidui means confession, and there are lots of different kinds of confessions during Yom Kippur. And Vidui, I think we discussed this last time. There is also a confession that people say on their deathbed. And my understanding is that concept of a deathbed confession actually preceded its inclusion in high holiday liturgy. We talked about Yamim Noraim, days of awe. Yizkor, we were just talking about. May God remember. On Yom Kippur, in the last day of 3 festivals. And Yom Tov, we talked about. Okay, so I am going to now call up the article on the shofar. And it's not a short article, but I think it'll be fun to start reading it. I think we might get through it depending on how quick we read. So, Joanne, would you like to do some reading?
Of course. Okay.
Okay.
Rabbi, before we read, are you going to send us everything that you just reviewed with us? Well,
I think I sent you the. Yes, the answer is yes. I will send it.
Okay. All right. Okay. A shofar is an ancient musical horn typically made of a ram's horn used for Jewish religious purposes. Like the modern bugle, the shofar lacks pitch-altering devices, with all pitch control done by varying the player's embouchure. The shofar is blown in synagogue services on Rosh HaShanah and at the end of Yom Kippur. It is also blown every weekday morning in the month of Elul, running up to Rosh HaShanah. Shofars come in a variety of sizes and shapes, depending on the choice of animal and level of finish.
I've never heard the word embouchure, but it means you tighten your lips, you get a higher note, and you don't have, like in a trumpet, valves or anything that helps you hit that note. Okay.
Bible and rabbinic literature. The shofar is mentioned frequently in the Hebrew Bible, the Talmud, and rabbinic literature. In the first instance, in Exodus 19, the blast of a shofar emanating from the thick cloud on Mount Sinai makes the Israelites tremble in awe.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I attended an interesting class on the shofar not too long ago. And if you look at that text very carefully in Exodus 19, it appears as though the shofar is understood to be the voice of God. If you read the text sort of surrounding the appearance, which is really an interesting idea.
Beautiful.
Okay.
The shofar was used to announce the new moon and the Jubilee year. The first day of Tishrei, known as Rosh HaShanah, is termed a memorial of blowing or day of blowing the shofar. Shofars were used for signifying the start of a war. They were also employed in processions as musical accompaniment and were inserted into the temple orchestra by David. Note that the trumpets described in Numbers 10 are a different instrument, described by the Hebrew word for trumpet, not shofar.
Chatzotzarut, I guess, rather
Right.
than shofar. Say,
In the temple in Jerusalem, the shofar was sometimes used together with the trumpet. On Rosh HaShanah, the principal ceremony was conducted with the shofar, with the instrument placed in the center with a trumpet on either side. It was the horn of an ibex, a type of wild goat, and straight in shape, being ornamented with gold at the mouthpiece. On fast days, the principal ceremony was conducted with the trumpets in the center and with a shofar on either side. On those occasions, the shofarot were ram's horns curved in shape and ornamented with silver at the mouthpieces.
You know, one interesting thing, which I think is worth mentioning, is that in the Torah, the holiday that occurs on the first day of Tishrei is not identified as New Year at all. It is a holy day, a day in which we do no work, and a day of the sounding of the shofar. It's not until actually the Mishnah that Rosh Hashanah is associated with the New Year. And again, there's a lot of detail on that one too.
On Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year, the ceremony was performed with the shofar as on New Year's Day. Shofar first indicated in Yovel. Indeed, in Rosh Hashanah 33b, the sages asked why the shofar sounded in Jubilee year. Rosh Hashanah 29a indicates that in ordinary years, both shofars and trumpets are sounded, but in the Jubilee year, only the shofar blasts. The rabbis created the practice of the shofar sounding every Yom Kippur, rather than just on the Jubilee year, once in 50 years.
So just to review some things, when you see things here which says Rosh Hashanah 33b, Rosh Hashanah 29a, they're talking about pages in the Talmud, and the tractate is called Rosh Hashanah. The Jubilee year was once every 50 years. All the land that had changed owners would revert back to their original owners.
Right.
And a bunch of other legal things went on. And the shofar was sounded. And so I always kind of observe, we sound the shofar at Tekiah Gedolah at the end of Yom Kippur, and we only have a 2% chance of being right, because no one knows when the Jubilee year is. They've lost track of this 50-year cycle. So we sound it every year, and once every 50 years, we're right in sounding it at the end of what would have been a Jubilee. Jerry.
Maybe you can make some sense out of this to me, because I always thought it was strange to celebrate a new year when you haven't had any contrition for the past and forgiveness. And it just seems like, yes, the gates close, and when they close, then we can celebrate the new year. It just, I don't understand.
Yep. So you need to dig deeper into the memo, because in fact, starting at Tisha B'Av, you're supposed to start digging into your past. And specifically in the month of Elul, you're supposed to spend the entire month of Elul in what is called Cheshbon HaNefesh, literally an accounting of your soul, and work on your sins and start asking people for forgiveness. So you're absolutely right. I mean, even worse, I would say many people would just say on Yom Kippur, that's when they're going to ask for forgiveness. But in Jewish tradition, it is a much longer process. So you're absolutely right. Okay.
Otherwise, for all other special days, the shofar is sounded shorter, and two special silver trumpets announce the sacrifice. When the trumpets sound the signal, all the people who were within the temple complex prostrate themselves, stretching out flat, face down, and on the ground. The shofar was blown in times of Joshua to help him capture Jericho. As they surrounded the walls, the shofar was blown and the Jews were able to capture the city. The shofar was commonly taken out to war so the troops would know when a battle would begin. The person who would blow the shofar would call out to the troops from atop a hill. All of the troops were able to hear the call of the shofar from their position because of its distinct sound.
And there was one place where in temple tradition, there's a corner of the temple area, and there was an inscription that says the place of the sounding of the shofar. And those rocks actually have been recovered from the rubble with the inscription surviving. Jerry, I don't know. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, let's go on to post-Talmudic times.
While the shofar is best known nowadays for its use on Rosh HaShanah, it also has been a number of other ritual uses. It is blown each morning during the month of Elul and to mark the end of the day of fasting on Yom Kippur, once the services have been completed in the evening. In Talmudic times, the shofar was also blown to introduce Shabbat. It was also used both to initiate and dissolve a cherem.
Cherem means someone who is excommunicated. Actually, I'm gonna open that. There is excommunication. Yeah, I know. Okay, there is excommunication in Judaism. In fact, I'm going to give a talk to a group of rabbis and priests on that subject. Not often practiced.
At the inception of diaspora, during the short-lived ban on playing musical instruments, the shofar was enhanced in its use as a sign of mourning for the destruction of the temple. The declaration of the ban's source was in fact set to the music itself as a lamentation. Al Necharot Bavel, within a few centuries of the ban. A full orchestra played in the temple. The ban was so that this would not be taken for granted, hence the wording of the ban. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, over my chiefest joy. The shofar is generally no longer used for secular purposes.
Except for a notable exception.
All right.
Okay.
Halacha, Jewish law, rules that the Rosh HaShanah shofar blast may not be sounded on Shabbat due to the potential that the Baal Tekiah shofar sounder may inadvertently carry it, which is in a class of forbidden Shabbat work. Originally, the shofar was sounded on Shabbat in the temple in Jerusalem. After the temple's destruction, the sounding of the shofar on Shabbat was restricted to the place where the great Sanhedrin was located. However, when the Sanhedrin ceased to exist, the sounding of the shofar on Shabbat was discontinued.
There's actually a very interesting story in rabbinic tradition. With the destruction of the temple, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, no, it wasn't Rabbi Yehuda, it was, I can't remember Rabbi. Sorry. Anyway, he was called upon to make a decision since they always sounded the shofar in the temple. Now, when there was no more temple, the question was, should the shofar be sounded? And there's this big discussion going on, and they're having trouble coming to a conclusion. And the head of the rabbinic academy, maybe the head of the Sanhedrin, said, "Look, Rosh Hashanah is upon us. I know we haven't come to a firm decision, but I'm making a ruling that we should sound the shofar." And so they sounded the shofar. And then the next time it comes up, they said, well, we have to open the discussion again to come to a decision. But the ruler, this guy, and I'm just blanking on his name, he said, sorry, the tradition has already been started. We now have the tradition of sounding the shofar, even though the temple doesn't exist, and it's been sounded ever since. But in a traditional synagogue, you would not have the shofar sounded on Shabbat. And again, this is the understanding that I have, which sounds pretty weak to me, that the Baal Tekiah, the person who's in charge of sounding it, might inadvertently carry it. So it seems to me that if you're so stringent about Shabbat, you're going to plan to have the shofar in the synagogue before Shabbat. But in traditional synagogues, you will not hear a shofar on Shabbat. Baruch.
Yes, I just want to say, a couple of years ago, when I was playing shofar, I forgot the name of the horn. It's the curved horn.
Yes, it's an oud. We're going to talk about
Yeah,
different
kudu, that's it.
kinds of
Okay.
shofars.
The kudu horn. And I found something that was really interesting to me. I was reading up on the kudu horn, and it said the reason that it's curved like that represents a bow when the
Yes.
player is playing the horn. That was really special to me because I used to
Yeah.
play the horn at a park for all our people who wanted to come and listen to it.
Yeah, my understanding is, I don't think this article gets into it, is that a shofar should be curved, and it symbolizes bending to the will of God.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. The other thing that you don't do on Shabbat, in terms of the liturgy, is you don't have Avinu Malkeinu, that prayer,
Oh, really?
because Avinu Malkeinu asks for stuff, and on Shabbat we pretend we have everything, so we don't ask for stuff. But
Ah,
in all the high holidays that I have conducted, I've always included both shofar and Avinu Malkeinu on Shabbat, because I think it's such a central, both are so central to the holiday.
mhm.
Let's see, Henry, would you like to read from Mitzvah?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. Mitzvah. The sages indicated that the mitzvah was to hear the sounds of the shofar. If a shofar was blown into a pit or cave, one fulfilled the mitzvah if they heard the original sound, but not if they heard the echo. Thus, most modern halakhic authorities hold that bearing a shofar on the radio or the internet would not be valid to satisfy the mitzvah because electronically reproduced sounds do not suffice for mitzvot that require hearing a specific natural sound. However, one should consult a competent rabbi if an unusually pressing situation arises, as some authorities believe that performing mitzvot through electronically reproduced sound is preferable to not performing them at all.
Yeah, so the blessing that we say before the shofar is sounded has the usual mitzvah opening, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, and then the last words of that blessing is lishma kol shofar. God commands us to hear the sound of the shofar. So the mitzvah is not in blowing of the shofar, the mitzvah is actually in hearing the shofar.
Exactly right.
Excuse me. According to Jewish law, women and minors are exempt from the commandment of hearing the shofar blown, as is the case with many positive time-bound commandments, but they are encouraged to attend the ceremony. If the
Baal, so Baal means master.
tekiyah, sound, shofar sounder, blows with the intention that all who hear will perform the mitzvah, then anyone listening, even someone passing by who intends to hear the shofar, can perform the mitzvah because the community blower blows for everybody. If the listener stands still, it is presumed he intends to hear. If one hears the blast, but with no intention of fulfilling the mitzvah, then the mitzvah has not been fulfilled.
Again, this is kind of the mindset that Judaism is all about complying with mitzvot.
Qualifications. The expert who blows or blasts or sounds the shofar is termed the Baal Tokia.
Yeah.
Is that right? Or Baal Tokia.
Tokea or Tekiah. And I'm not sure. One may be Ashkenazi, one may be Sephardic. I'm not sure.
Master of the blast. Being a Baal Tekiah is an honor. Every male Jew is eligible for this sacred office, providing he is acceptable to the congregation. The one who blows the shofar on Rosh HaShanah should be learned in the Torah and should be God-fearing.
Of course, the reference to male would be not apply in, I would think, in conservative or certainly not in reform.
I have a shofar and I do blow it.
Good for you. The
Yeah.
Shulchan Aruch discusses who is fit to blow the shofar on
So
behalf of the
Shulchan Aruch
congregation.
is a major code of Jewish law.
Means a set table, right?
It means the prepared or set table, arranged table. Yes.
Anyone not obligated to fulfill the mitzvah of sounding the shofar cannot fulfill the commandment for parentheses cover another whom duty it is to perform the mitzvah.
So this is kind of an interesting concept. If you're not commanded to do something, you can't fulfill it on behalf of a congregation. So a good example is reading from the Torah for a public reading of Torah, like on Shabbat or a holiday or high holiday. So in order to be eligible to read that in fulfillment of the community's mitzvah commandment, to hear someone read from a Torah scroll, the person has to be obligated to read from the Torah scroll. And in traditional Judaism, those are males above the age of 13. So you can, in theory, a Jewish boy age 10, 11 might be fully competent to read from a Torah scroll, but he wouldn't be eligible to fulfill the ritual requirement in a Jewish service. In the same way, if you're not commanded to hear the sound of the Torah, which now what sound of the shofar, which we're talking about women in traditional Judaism, then you are not eligible to blow it on behalf of the congregation. And we have some interesting controversies because I think the rabbis rule same issue with reading a public reading of the book of Esther. So there's a discussion whether a woman can read the book of Esther on behalf of the congregation. And I think the rabbis say she can because it's about a woman after all. So I think they make an exemption, but that would be something I would want to probably double check. Okay.
Although a woman who is exempt from this mitzvah because it is time bound may not blow the shofar for men whose duty it is to perform the mitzvah, a woman may intone the shofar for herself and other women. Similarly, she may say a blessing over the mitzvah even though it is not mandatory. The requisite blessing contains the words Asher Kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, who sanctifies us with his commandments, mitzvot, and commanded us to, but women are not commanded in this mitzvah. Only a free man, not even a slave who would become free in the next month, can be a Baal Tekiah.
Obviously, a lot of this is irrelevant in our time.
Agreed.
So, choice of animal.
All right. According to the Talmud, a shofar may be made from the horn of any animal from the Bovidae family except that of a cow, although a ram is preferable. Bovidae horns are made of a layer of keratin, the same material as human toenails and fingernails, around a core of bone, with a layer of cartilage in between, which can be removed to leave the hollow keratin horn. An antler, on the other hand, is made of solid bone, so an antler cannot be used as a shofar because it cannot be hollowed out.
So here's a example of what we were just talking about.
Interesting. Okay. There is no requirement for ritual slaughter, shechita. Theoretically, the horn can come from a non-kosher animal because under most, but not all, interpretations of Jewish law, the shofar is not required to be mutar
b'ficha, permissible in your mouth. I've never actually heard that before.
Okay. The mitzvah is hearing the shofar, not eating the animal it came from. The shofar falls into the category of tashmishay mitzvah, objects used to perform a mitzvah that do not themselves have inherent holiness. Moreover, because horn is always inedible, it is considered afra bi'alma, mere dust, and not a non-kosher substance.
Interesting. Okay.
The Aleph Hamagan deliberates the order of preference. 1, curved ram. 2, curved other sheep. 3, curved other animal. 4, straight, ram or otherwise. 5, non-kosher animal. 6, cow. The first 4 categories are used with a bracha, blessing. The 5th with a bracha, and the last not at all.
Yeah, I've never heard of using a non-kosher animal or a cow. And the reason I always heard that you don't use a cow or a bull's horn, obviously, is because we don't want to remind God about that certain incident of the golden calf.
The golden calf.
Yep. So here's a sheep with nice curved horns, make a good shofar. And here's a kudu, which makes a very nice shofar.
In practice, 2 species are generally used. The Ashkenazi and Sephardi shofar is made from the horn of a domestic ram, while a Yemeni shofar is made from the horn of a kudu. A Moroccan shofar is flat with a single broad curve. A crack or hole in the shofar affecting the sound renders it unfit for ceremonial use. The shofar may not be painted in colors, but it may be carved with artistic designs. Shofars, especially the Sephardi shofars, are sometimes plated with silver across part of their length for display purposes, although this invalidates them for use in religious practices.
Oh, right.
The horn is flattened and shaped by the application of heat, which softens it. A hole is made from the tip of the horn to the natural hollow inside. It is played much like a European brass instrument, with the player blowing through the hole while buzzing the lips, causing the air column inside to vibrate. Sephardi shofars do usually have a curved mouthpiece resembling that of a European trumpet or French horn, but smaller. Ashkenazi shofars do not. Because the hollow of the shofar is irregular in shape, the harmonics obtained when playing the instrument can vary. Rather than a pure perfect fifth, intervals as narrow as a fourth or as wide as a sixth may be produced.
Some of you may know what they're talking about, but I don't.
Use in modern Jewish prayer. The shofar is used mainly on Rosh HaShanah. It is customary to blow the shofar 100 or 101 times on each day of Rosh HaShanah. However, halakha, only
Now,
requires.
let me read it because there's a bunch of Hebrew there. Only
All right, fair
requires
enough.
it to be blown 30 times. The various types of blasts are known as tekiah. Tekiah is a short, simple blast. I don't know that they describe this. Shavarim, related to the word shavar, which means to break. It's the We'll listen to a recorded version in a moment. And it's as though your heart is breaking. And teruah is a staccato. Ta, 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 ta. The required blast consists of the sequences tekiah, shavarim, teruah, tekiah, tekiah, shavarim, tekiah, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Each sequence repeated 3 times. The shofar is also blown in synagogue at the conclusion of Yom Kippur. Some only blow a tekiah gedolah. Others blow tekiah, shavarim, teruah, tekiah. I'll read a little. Because of its inherent ties to the days of repentance and the inspiration that comes along with hearing its piercing blast, the shofar is also blown after weekday morning services, in some community also weekday afternoon services, during the entire month of Elul, the last month of the Jewish civil year preceding Rosh HaShanah. It is not blown on the last day of Elul, in some communities the last 3 days of Elul, to mark the difference between the voluntary blasts of the month and the mandatory blasts on Rosh Hashanah. Shofar blasts are also used in some communities during penitential rituals such as Yom Kippur Katan and optional prayer services during times of communal distress. The exact modes of sounding can vary from location to location. And let's see. Yeah, these are more, well, it's almost 8 o'clock. I want to actually play. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And then I'm going to go to a 20-second video of someone sounding a shofar, but I need to click on share sound. So here we go. Yeah. Shavarim. Teruah. And Tekiah Gedolah. Let's see. So,
When you're actually, Rabbi,
Alan, I saw, whoop, Alan disappeared.
when you're actually blowing that,
Sorry?
when you're actually blowing that, I count 1, 3, 9, 1.
I
One
don't
blast-
understand. Hold on. I don't follow what you're saying.
Okay, when you blow the shofar in your head, you count 1 blow, 3 blows, 9 blows, and 1 blow, and you just keep doing that. And then at the end, you blow the long blow. I forgot what it's called, but you blow as long as you can. Yeah, you keep going as long as you can blow it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think okay. So I don't know that there were a couple of pictures, but I want to mention something that I talk about a lot with the shofar. I once attended. It was a Jewish renewal conclave conference, and there was a sort of a Kabbalist talking about the shofar. And apparently there's a Kabbalistic teaching that the shofar reminds us of the interaction between God and humanity. In order to get a sound from the shofar, to get a shofar blast, we need a physical shofar, right? And we need wind blowing through it. Of course, the Hebrew word for wind is ruach, which is also the Hebrew word for spirit. So what this teaching reminds us of is that that in order to have mitzvot done in the world, in order to make the world a better place, we need both physical beings in the world, represented by the shofar. The physical beings are us, and we need the Ruach Elohim. We need the Spirit of God animating us. So that was that teaching. So then I took it one step further and thought about the physics of blowing the shofar. So if you think about it, all sound is vibration, right? So the question is, what is the source of the vibration in the shofar? And I'm not asking a very deep and subtle question. It's a very simple question. What's vibrating to make the sound start?
Your air.
Your lips. Your lips.
Right. So if I vibrate my lips right now without the shofar, it sounds like this. Right? Called the Bronx cheer. I was born in the Bronx. Okay. But what happens is with a horn, any horn, and certainly the shofar, it takes why it sounds so not so nice when you do is because there's a lot of different frequencies all jumbled together. So what does the shofar do? It selects a frequency. All those frequencies are in my lips, but the shofar, because of its shape and size, selects one of them, maybe a few of them. So what occurred to me is God speaks to the world in many frequencies. And I would say those are different faith traditions. And then we as individuals take one of those frequencies, and our job is to amplify it and bring that particular message of God to the world. So this sort of underlies my idea of interfaith work, that different faiths are not, we're right and the other 99.8% of the world is wrong, but we each have different frequencies, we each have different songs. I found the shofar in Jerusalem. One of the things I really like about it is part of it is smooth, but the back of it is in the natural form of the udu. And it reminded me that in the same way, part of the world is completed. Creation has been taken some distance, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Right.
And I can tell you this is a pretty hardy shofar because I have schlepped it all over the place and dropped it, and occasionally it cracks. And but it's still, I wouldn't say it's still ticking, It's still sound.
Is
And
it considered a
I-
holy object?
sorry?
You know, when we drop a book, a siddur, we kiss
Right.
it. Okay, if you drop a shofar, is it considered holy? Do we kiss it?
No, actually, this article covered that. A
Yeah,
shofar
it
is just,
said it was.
it said it
Yeah.
was not holy.
Okay, but what
it's
if you're using it in a synagogue?
Yeah, it's
Is it?
still, my understanding of those things, particularly things that have the name of God in them, are holy. So you drop a book, you kiss it.
Yes.
And then, of course, the ornaments for a Torah scroll are considered holy. The ark
Right.
is considered holy.
Okay.
I never really saw it addressed before, but this article said basically it's just a horn. It's used to fulfill a mitzvah, but the mitzvah is hearing. So I have to say that I never thought about it before, but
No,
I do remember it's saying in this article. I'm looking for where it actually said that, but it said that it's let's see. It says objects used to perform a mitzvah do not themselves have inherent holiness. And that's
well, but we
footnote number
store
2.
it in the ark with
Okay.
the
Sorry?
Torah. Our synagogue, I don't know if it's all synagogues, store the shofar inside the ark.
Okay.
And I would consider things inside an ark to be holy. So
I would say a ark is a holy place, but I have dropped the shofar on the floor many times. It never occurred to me to kiss it. I mean, I certainly treat it with respect. And hang on, I want to show you something. Because it bothered me, I was actually more afraid of breaking the shofar. The last time I was in Israel, I discovered they had, I sometimes call this a shofar schlepper. So this is a nice, kind of velour case, and that you put the shofar in, and my shofar fits in very well. And it says Hallelu B'teka Shofar, which is
that's
from the
beautiful.
Hallelu
That's really nice.
Psalm, the 150th Psalm, which says, praise God with the sound of the shofar. So I use that now whenever I bring my shofar around.
That's lovely.
Yeah, I actually get very excited about stuff like that. So that's pretty much, yeah, it's a little after 8. I'm making an executive rabbinic decision. We will not have classes next week. We certainly do not have classes on Wednesday. Wednesday night is Erev Rosh HaShanah. And I'm just going to take the Yomim HaNoraim off and not have classes during that week. So you will all be getting emails from me as to when the next one will start. Maybe we'll have a session on Sukkot, since that's going to be the holiday following.
Yeah.
I think the Monday,
Mm.
I think the Monday after Yom Kippur is actually Sukkot. So I don't know whether I'll have a class that night, but I'm tired. I have had 6 weddings in the last 6 weekends. I got another one coming up this weekend. I have 2
Wow.
more in October.
Wow.
It's been crazy. I don't know what's going on, and of course sprinkling of funerals in between. So I'm gonna take a little time off.
Well, good for you. Get
You
some rest.
deserve that.
Thank you. And I wish you all a Shana Tova Umetuka, a good and sweet New Year, and may you all be inscribed for a wonderful year in Sefer HaChaim, in the Book of Life.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Shana
Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, and I will probably send out my email tomorrow morning because I'm going to take the rest of the night off.
Thank you for all these
Thank
great
you.
readings.
Yes.
They were really, really good.
Rabba and Laila Tov.
Lila Tov.
Yep, hang in there.
Mhm.
Rosh Hashanah is coming. Good night, Henry. See you in a couple of days.
Great. Look forward to it.
And actually, my daughter Andrea will be joining us for Rosh Hashanah. with a good friend she made in Israel when she spent the semester there, a young woman named Vered and Vered's 16-year-old daughter. Will be
Wow.
joining
Very
us-
nice.
They'll be joining us both for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
In Merced?
Excellent.
Sorry?
Excellent.
In Merced.
In Merced, yes.
How far is that from here?
It's over 4 hours, like 4.5 hour drive, depending on
Wow.
it's not right around the corner.
Yeah. So do you stay there for the whole week?
No, I do stay there, and of course we're in a home, so the home has bedrooms and shower, and so I have a very nice room.
Good.
And actually I'm staying over Friday, because
You're gonna-
Saturday I have another wedding,
Oh,
like in Santa Ynez or something. So rather
my
than driving
gosh.
all the way home and another like 2 hours or more back,
Oh, boy.
I'm going to spend the night. I'm going to go to Yosemite.
Ooh.
I realize
Oh, nice.
I'm still recording. I probably.
That's really nice.
Very nice. Yeah.
I hope Sonia will join you.
You can hope all you want, but she won't.
Oh, not even Yosemite. Tell her to take Keone with her and
Oh yeah,
ride
yeah. We'll
there.
ride up. That would be fun. There's
Yeah.
actually a lot of room to graze in the backyard there.
Yeah.
They have the synagogue. Okay, so Shana Tova, everyone.
Tova.
Not to-
Take care.